Just a Bit of Bread by Neon Songetsu, Chapter 10, to share power. It's so nice to meet a kindred spirit after all these years. Excuse me, what are you on about? We've never met before. You're right, we have not, but this isn't your first life, is it? I can see it in your soul. You haven't realized yet your semblance, like your life, is the pinnacle of evolution. You have adapted, overcome, and evolved. Your gift allows you to take, but also to give, and more. I suspect that's much like your nature itself. You have so much power, it's so much potential, but you don't realize it. I'm glad she never found you. Who's she? Her name? A Salem. A meeting of minds. To share power. Emerald was fine. Their team was fine. Everything was fine. Naruto chanted the words like a mantra in his head, reciting them over and over again in a rota. They helped him find his center. He would not bend. He would not break. Even here in Ospen's office, under so many prying eyes, he refused to show weakness. He didn't like it any more than Emerald did. She squirmed in their seat and tried her best to breathe, but he could clearly see that this was getting to her. Her innate paranoia probably wasn't helping anyway. Once again, he found himself struck by the wild urge to grab her and run, leaving all of this behind. Once upon a time, it would have been easy, a quick illusion to distract Ospen, and they would be away. They could still do that now, but this time there would be consequences. But they put down roots. They'd made friends. Blake and Puro would be heartbroken if they ran away. To say nothing of Coco and Velvet, he imagined their faces. He remembered his stern words to Blake. He told her to stand and fight. He recalled the encouragement Emerald had given Pura. They'd all fought together, been blooded together. To just walk out now on them... No, he couldn't do that. So he didn't. Besides, none of them were his enemies. They were friends and allies all. So just calm down. Breathe. Easy, right? Not so much. He forced himself to focus and tried to temper the newfound power boiling in his veins. That proved difficult. Life energy and the occasional stray semblance were one thing, but this wasn't something that he had any idea how to control. It didn't want to obey him. Damn it, his mind raged. Stupid semblance really bit me in the ass this time, didn't it? He just wanted to help Emerald. Instead, he found himself drawn into the same plight as she. This power was ancient and old, so very old. Wild, too, like wrestling a storm with your bare hands. It just couldn't be done. This strange new energy had a mind of its own. It did not want to be contained. It wanted to be free. It wanted to sing. It longed to be free, not contained in a mortal shell. His emotional state didn't much help matters. This strange new power battered at the walls of his self-control, chipping them away bit by bit until it felt like his head was going to explode. It wanted out. One look at Emerald told him she was contending with the same burden, her eyes pulsing with the same flames, red to his blue. It hurt seeing her like this. You okay? He reached out a hand and his partner latched onto it like a drowning woman, all but leaping in his lap. The motion startled him more so as her arms wound around his neck and her forehead kissed his. Not a heartbeat later, she flung her semblance at him, wrapping him in an illusion as she had so many times before, and their own subtle means of communication. He watched her lips move, the sound unheard to everyone but him. No, I'm not. She wrinkled her nose to him. I don't trust that old man. I don't trust any of this. Neither do I, he whispered back. But we need him. For now. She scowled and the mirage broke. Damn Emperor, what had she infected them with? Flames still flicked at the edge of his vision, even when he closed his eyes, unable to be ignored. They moved whenever he turned his head, as if his face was aflame. They irritated him beyond measure, distracted him as much as her, and he knew Emerald was probably going mad. Pierre and Blake certainly were. Are you sure you are right? Naruto blinked, somewhat startled to find the resident redhead touching one hand his forehead with a concerned expression. Poor Piro, always such a warlord, forcing himself upright in his chair and careful to keep his powers at bay. He reached around Emerald to give the younger girl a swift hug. Much to his surprise, he felt her bury her head into the divot of his shoulder. All right, Maybe she surprised. Maybe she surprised him. Surprised her. He felt her bury her head into a div. Maybe she was a little more than worried. He gave her back a brief squeeze and pulled away. We're fine, Pierre. He forced a smile he didn't feel. That at least lifted her spirits. Blick twitched, ears gone flat atop her head. You look fine. The blonde quirked a brow and offered her an arm. Wanna hug it out? Might make us feel better. She skittered back. No. Naruto felt a brief flash of pity mixed with pride. Stubborn, silly girl. She really was far too easy to tease. Vacuo would have eaten her alive. He opened his mouth to tease his fellow faunas further, but Emerald got there first. You will be all right if someone would start talking already. Her blazed gaze nailed Ozpin in his chair. In but a moment, the headmaster temporized with a raised hand. You'll have all the answers you seek and more. Once Crow arrives, a pause then, as he seemed to consider something else. His hand fell and a small smile played across his aged visage. Do not ask about the name. He's rather sensitive about the spelling. The little quartet blinked. Why? Pyrrha perked up and went a step further. Do you mean Crow Bronwyn? Do you know him, Miss Nikos? The redhead winced. He's something of a legend in Mistral, though not for the reasons you might think. As though summoned by those very words, the elevator doors swept open, and a lean man clad in dusty traveling leathers stumbled really through the aperture. Naruto had all of an instant to take in dark hair, red eyes, and a weapon at his back, not to mention the flask at his hip. Before he was upon them, the heady stench of alcohol hit them a moment later, drawing a grimace from the 14s. Bloody bastard smelled like he slept in a brewery. This, Naruto realized, must be Crow. All right, Oz, I'm here, the newcomer drawled, ignoring the four of them. Would you pull me out the Atlas like that? Ozpin snuffed, then made a face of his own. It rather smells as if I pulled you out of a bar. Well, yeah. The stranger flashed him a roguish grin. Hunting is thirsty work. Emerald exchanged a bleak look with Pyrrha. I see what you mean. Blake scoffed. Naruto was tempted to do the same. Well, she tried to warn us. Where's Amber? Crow ignored them. Again. What were they? Chopped liver. And took a few steps forward, uncaring as the elevator doors clicked shut behind him. You mentioned her during our call, said it was urgent. His bleary gaze roved over each of them, only to narrow when he didn't find his ward there. Where is she? Here at last, Ozpin's facades fractured. I did mention her, but it's more complicated than that. I had thought it best to speak of this in person. Well, Bronwyn's brow furrowed. I'm here now. Spill it. Amber took her life, Crow. Her successor sits here before you. Team Nebula winced at the unpleasant reminder. Crow scoffed outright. She did what? No. He shook his head. Not her. No way. I don't believe you. Amber was a lot of things, but suicidal? Not a chance. It is a matter of belief. The headmaster quirked a brow. Naruto, Emerald, if you would. Naruto had only just gotten his eyes to control. They flared up again the moment he lost concentration. Judging by Emerald's curse, the reverse applied to her. A gust of wind surged through the room, causing many a bad hair day before the two of them managed to rein themselves in. Well, shit! Crow saw the burning eyes and spit a curse. How the hell did that happen? He squinted at Naruto, or rather his eyes. That shouldn't be possible. This from the drunken bird. Naruto squinted right back, a scowl twisting his face. I didn't think it was possible for you to smell this bad. Huh? Oddly enough, that made the drunkard laugh. At least you've got spirit. That's something at least. Bronwyn! The elevator digged open again without warning, and a blast of cold ice shot through to strike the unfortunate drunkard on the arse. He rounded to face the perpetrator with a snarl and was promptly struck in the face by a second blast right back. A third struck him low in the gut, flipped him over Ozpin's desk, and slammed him into a wall, leaving a decidedly crow-shaped impression behind. He hung there for a moment, eyes spinning merely in his head before he slid down with a groan. Well, Ozpin put his head in his hands. It would seem we have company. You cheeky little shit. The woman's voice absolutely snarled into the ensuing silence. Did you have Did you have to hit every single button on the elevator? Crazy bitch. Crow massaged his hindquarters with a growl as he climbed to his feet. Thought I told you not to follow me up here. Why, whatever do you mean? A low laugh answered him. I must be hard of hearing and blind. His eyes flashed. You hit me with a damn icicle. No, wait. A pause. Icicles. A stranger emerged from the elevator. You lived, didn't you? Clad in a loose, assured dress that billowed about her frail frame, she limped into the office with determination and grace, back hunched only slightly with the weight of age, or perhaps some unseen burden. Nat regarded her with idle curiosity. There was something odd about her that caught the eye, a presence, one that commanded respect. Though her hair was gray and her face lined with age, her blue eyes burned high and wild with the springtime of youth. Her sole sign of weakness was the gnarled staff of black oak she leaned upon, longer than she was tall. Damn thing certainly looked heavy enough. As he looked on, she stubbed the crow's toe for good measure. He lurked back, clutching at his foot. Again, why? She grinned. For being a prat. My apologies, a new voice sighed. You know how she gets when she sets her mind on something. And you did antagonize her. Bite me, iron dick. Or another sigh, this one lower than the last. Really now, you're just being crass. Behind that curmudgeonless old woman came a man Naruto actually recognized, much to his concentration and then dread. Any goodwill he might have felt evaporated in that moment. He felt himself wilt. Judging by her sudden stiffness in his lap, Emerald recalled him just as well as did Emerald. It was a bit difficult to forget someone like that. He knew that face and uniform anywhere, although said uniform had been decidedly less grand since the last meeting. What's the freaking General of Atlas doing here? She hissed. One of Blake's ears twitched. Shh! Naruto hushed Emerald. If General James Ironwood heard them, he didn't show it. He only had eyes for the shrunken crone harassing Crow. That's enough, Freya. Don't strain yourself. Let me be, Jimmy. She swatted his hand down with surprising speed for one so frail, giving the exasperated huntsman time to scramble back before she could smote him with her staff again. I've still got some life left in these old bones, and I will be damned before I miss something like... Oh! Her brow shot into her hairline as she found them at last. Oh my! You poor dears! You look a right mess. Her lined face cringed in a smile. Don't you worry. We'll have this sorted shortly. Naruto wasn't one to blindly trust someone, but something in him wanted to believe those words. Osmond didn't even look surprised by this point, more resigned, really. Did you have to bring her, James? Ironwood offered a rueful chuckle. She brought herself. When she heard about Amber, she all but hijacked a bullhead. Of course I did, the woman cackled. I'd not miss this for anything. The headmaster of Ville looked like he might protest to that effect, but thought better of it. Naruto wondered what manner of secret lurked behind that impassive mind. On the surface, it didn't seem strange for two men to meet like this, but something niggled at him all the same. Team Nebula. Osmond made his introduction at last. I'd like to meet Freya, the Winter Maiden. Hello. Pyrrha was polite enough to wave at the very least. Blake just stared. Emerald raised a hand. Should that term mean something? A lengthy explanation followed. By the end of it, the world had shattered forevermore. Naruto reeled back, bright and fit to burst. The grim-headed leader, magic was real, relics were a thing. This power was trapped in him and Emerald. Until death, he dared a glance at his comrades. Blake looked to have gone into shock. Pyrrha's smile had become incredibly brittle. Emerald was still against him. Her expression schooled into a blank mask. He'd seen that expression many a time before. He knew it by the tightness of her eyes. She wasn't angry. She'd gone well past it, just as he had. She was furious. So was he. Anger coiled into his stomach and burst into anger, a twisted and gnarled root that threatened to consume him entirely. Only a few minutes ago he'd felt bad for Amber. He had pitied a girl so filled with fear that she sought death as an alternative to being hunted. She'd manipulated him and Amber into killing her because in her mind that was better than a life on the run. That bitch, that absolute bitch, he hadn't wanted to kill her then. He did now, but he couldn't. Could he? She was dead and gone, out of his reach as the heavens themselves, and in her final moments, her fear had dragged his team into a bloody shadow war. So that's it, huh? Laughter tumbled out of him, ugly and sharp as his fingers began to twitch at his sides. We were in the wrong place at the right time. Unfortunate, but true. Osmond at least had the good graces to look abashed. I know you did not ask for this burden to be thrust upon you. No, Amber hissed, her words colder than a vacuum night. We didn't. Choose your words very carefully. Beacon was supposed to be a second chance for him and Emerald, a chance to put the mistakes of their past behind them and start anew, a chance for a new career, a new life, a new everything. So much for that. None of this was fair. They hadn't asked for this. They didn't want this. He grit his teeth until he felt a molder crack. Slowly but surely, the wind swept in. He felt the moment jade flames sprang to life in Emerald's open palms. This strange new power connected the two of them. He could feel her anger and fear as clearly as it were his own, just as he could feel her drawing upon the maiden's might in her rage. Part of him wanted to give into it himself, to just smash everything and be done with it. It would be so simple. He just had to let the power out. It would do the rest. But he wasn't that person. Not anymore. And some of his anger and suspicion must have shown through his face, because Osmond sighed. Rest assured, I am your ally. He was regarding them warily now, like a pair of skittish foxes fit to bite. Good. I will do you no harm, nor will Crow. What me? Course not, Bronwyn grumbled. Thought that'd be obvious. Nor will I, Onwood interjected. Swear it. The men blinked. Freya tittered softly. Osmond found his voice first. I beg your pardon. Swear it, Emerald repeated as she climbed to her feet, eyes ablaze. Swear here and now that you'll keep us out of this, all this Salem and relic nonsense. We don't want anything to do with any of it. Freya favored him with a pitying frown. It's not that simple, lass. This isn't a duty you can forswear. Then we'll never use that power, even if you're hunted for it. Onwood interjected ruthlessly. You will be, I can assure you of that, even given your unique circumstances. Such is the fate of a maiden. You've already been told the truth. You need to be kept safe, not allowed into the wilds. That's not fair, Blake burst out, eyes wide and frightful. What do you intend to do? Stick them in a cage? On the contrary, I believe they should be confined to Beacon, as should the two of you. You're a risk. How are we a risk? Pyrrha frowned, somewhat taken aback. You can't do that. You have no right. You're right, the general nodded. I can't. I have no power in Vale. Osmond, however, does. All eyes turned to the man in question. He stippled his fingers and said not a word. Do you see now how they seek to shackle you? Naruto released the short, sharp breath of anger. Enough! He climbed to his feet with great care, teeth sharp and eyes gone red. Scarlet sparks snarled at his fingertips. His newfound power threatened to thunder out of him, a hurricane ready to be unleashed upon the unwitting and unworthy. Yet again he exercised restraint, but only just. Emerald's right. This isn't our fight. Ha! She preened. However, we've been dragged into this against our will. It's not like we can ignore it. His gaze swept the room, daring an objection when none can he bolt on. Surely we can make some concessions here. And if we refuse, blank red eyes rose to regard him. Then I turn the rest of you into a tin can. Would you like that, General? Easy now. Crow jerked back, palms raised. We're on the same side here. Just calm down. When faced with maiden power, Osmond proved quicker on the uptick. If it's an oath you want from me, I'll give you one. Before he could say more, the headmaster's hand snapped up, another coming to rest over his heart. I swear on the graves of my daughters that I will never harm you or your team. His head bowed for further still. You will not be impeded any way. Furthermore, you and your teams will be free to continue your lessons here at Beacon as you please. May they haunt me if I break this sacred vow. Naruto stiffened. You'd go that far? Crow winced. Oz, ain't that a bit much? On the contrary, Freya limped forward, leaning heavily upon her staff. I think it's enough. As a certain general looked on aghast, she offered Naruto a weak hand. Don't mind James. His heart is in the right place. She favored him with a kindly smile. If he gets uppity, you're welcome to smack him around a bit. We only want the best for you after all. A pale blue eye winked at them as she said those words. Actually winked. Wouldn't want to ruin that second life of yours now, would you? I can promise you, we're not here to lock you away, despite what some might suggest. Ironwood grunted. I'm standing right here. Go downstairs, Jimmy. She flickered a lazy finger at him. We'll talk later. Remarkably, the general deferred to Freya and did just that, though his look suggested they hadn't heard the end of it. And Naruto squinted at her. Did she know who they were? It was possible they'd worn masks during their time in Atlas and gone to great lengths to conceal their identities. He was sure he would have remembered someone like Freya at that. Beneath her gentle smile, however, he sensed a heart of steel. He felt his anger begin to subside. Ironwood might be difficult, but at least the Winter Maiden was reasonable, and clearly she had some sway over him. He clasped her palm, and together they shook. Fair enough. Now that we've put that aside, I simply must inquire about the semblance of yours. There was a note of eagerness in Osmond's voice now, like a boy who'd found a particularly shiny toy. How does it work? I believe it's what allowed you to contain some measure of the maiden's power in the first place. Naruto's jaw clicked shut in silent defiance. Wait. Crow raised his voice. Semblance or not, none of this explains how he stabbed a finger at Naruto, has part of Amber's power. It only goes to woman. We know that. Then let's test this, shall we? Much to Naruto's chagrin, Fair offered him a veined hand. Try to take some of my power, boy. Let's see if it works a second time. Well, she's got a pair. Emerald applauded. Blake winced. That might not be a good idea. Seconded. Piro piped up, startling them. You don't know what you're asking. Naruto did it. Are you certain? They're right. You know, it's not a pleasant process at all. Come now. Freya rolled her eyes. I'm no spring chicken, but I've plenty of life left in me yet. You won't kill me. If you say so. His hand touched hers, and he closed his eyes, pushing his semblance to the fore. Reaper's touch wasn't a passive gift. He had to activate it. This time he was cautious. How much to take for all her fire. Freya was an old woman. He didn't want to sap her life force at all, but she was being so damn insistent. And besides, she was right. There was only one way to tell if yesterday had been a fluke or not. There was something there, a deep blue flame in the dark. Naruto wrapped his mind around it, imagining a pair of invisible hands cradling the cold fire to shield it from the wind. It felt cold. Cold? How strange. Why would fire be cold? No, it wasn't fire at all. It was a blizzard. Even in his mind, he could feel frost creeping through his fingers. He threaded his aura through it like a fish hook and gave the gentle tug he could. Freya jerked her hand back with a hiss, shattering his concentration. His eyes snapped open. Hers seemed a bit dimmer than before. Emerald hastened to his side. How much did you take? I'm fine. The old crone pushed herself upright with a laugh. My, I certainly felt that. The boy's a versatile black hole. As she spoke, she massaged her wrist, forcing color to creep back into her hand once more. Naruto saw the cracked, flaking skin there and winced. He doesn't just strain aura, he takes your very life force. For all her pain, she sounded impressed. Small wonder he's able to snatch semblances. I suspect I'd not be able to get away if it actually meant to drain me. Fascinating, Osmond murmured. Crow disagreed. That's not the word I'd use. It wasn't an insult, but shame flooded Naruto's face. Nevertheless, he hadn't meant to hurt her. I can give it back, you know. It drew a murmurs of confusion from everyone in save his team. Of course, they knew what he could do. Teammates didn't keep secrets, certainly not friends. Freya considered him anew. Can you now? Well, don't just stand there gawking. Let's see it. Crow scoffed. Got a death wish, this one? I heard that, bird brain. Quick as a flash, she rounded on Naruto again, eyes narrowed. Be careful this time, would you? I'm afraid these old bones of mine aren't as strong as they used to be. Naruto laid a hand on hers and dreaded upon his aura. Now this she felt more comfortable with. He rather liked this aspect of his semblance. Yes, it could be used to harm and hurt, even kill, but it could give back what he had taken and more. He'd been stockpiling energy for quite some time now, and the maiden's energy had only bolstered that. It was the easiest thing to hook his aura into hers and send it racing back the way it had come. An easy task indeed. The tiniest thorn of guilt pricked at him and held him back. I wouldn't, were I you. He ignored the voice. His mind plunged back into the black, and he found himself staring at that strange blizzard again. He was beginning to realize what it was. Her soul. It looked fainter now, like a storm dashed against the slope of a mighty mountain. On a whim, he cradled it with his hands again. This time, he gave her a little more than he should. Then he should, nearly a fourth of what he'd been accumulating for the last year. Not aura, but pure life energy. It would tap his reserves a bit, but he could always take more from an enemy or a grim. He felt no compunctions with sharing what he had taken. A faint scarlet shimmer spread from his hand and sufficed itself across Freya's palm. Soon it spread to her elbow, her shoulder, followed by her entire body. Well, this is strange, the Winter Maiden frowned within the scarlet shroud. I really don't feel anything. Her words peaked into a surprisingly girlish yelp as power poured out of him and into her. Naruto felt the moment her power latched onto his, like an infant at the teeth. It sucked greedily. There, that should be enough. Time to stop. He reached in to cut the tether between them. And failed. A startled hiss tore out of him. He couldn't. Somewhere deep inside of him, a dam had burst, and now the floodwaters poured forth. Wind picked up and brought every other element with it. Fire and ice melded to make steam, shrouded the room in an ethereal haze. Freya gasped in surprise, but rather than push him back, she pulled him in. He suspected it wasn't intentional on her part because her hand gave a sudden spasm and clasped down around his. Touching him most painfully, she couldn't release him. He couldn't let go either. His legs buckled as a jolt of weakness shot through him. Emerald reached for his shoulder, only to buckle as an uncontrolled burst of wind forced her back. Frantic, he slapped his free hand forward and pushed. It worked a little too well. The Winter Maiden shot backwards, vanishing into the haze, and struck a wall. Her body slumped with a groan. Crow all but slid to her side. Are you all right? I'm fine, bird brain. Was it just him, or did her voice sound different, lighter somehow? Coughing but once, Freya shook her head and emerged from the fog, revealing rose cheeks and a small smile. Well, pearly white teeth flashed in a cheery grin. That certainly had some oomph to it. Be more careful next time. Naruto's jaw popped open with an audible clack. What? Emerald joined him, eyes wide. The Pyrrha leaned back. Actual. Blake gasped. Hell. The rest stared. What? Bright blue eyes blinked. Ospen, Crow, everyone, why you stared at me like that? Freya was nowhere to be seen. A stranger stood in their place. Where had the old crone gone? This woman looked 30 at worst. Her once loose robes and cloak now clung scantily tight across a curiously figure that would make even Glinda Good Witch green with envy. Color had bled back into her hair as well, banishing the silver from her cropped tresses, which weren't short at all now, spilling down on her back in a crimson curtain, lush and vibrant with life. Huh, she'd been a redhead, who knew? Crow flushed and coughed into his fist. Freya, the redhead blinked. Yeah, bird brain. He averted his gaze and pointed. She looked down, blinked. Wait, what? Blue eyes bulged. Her hands rose to cup something that had not been there before. Bloody hell! I've got tits again. When did that happen? Emerald swore. You've got to be kidding me. She's stacked. What in the world? My voice? The Winter Maiden touched a hand to her mouth, then raised it and bugged at the flawless skin there. What have you done to me? Fatigue hit Naruto like a truck, and he reeled back, feeling vaguely nauseous. Not from the sight before him. He was a healthy red-blooded male after all. No, It was a deeper weakness that had him gasping for air. He hadn't meant to give her that much energy at all. It just happened. His eyes were still burning brighter than ever. The power within him sang high and happy and wild in the presence of its kin. Beneath that, his soul ached, throbbing with a vaguely unpleasant sort of pain. I'm not sure, he admitted, wincing at just how weak he sounded. Blake and Pyrrha had to help him sit until the tremors passed. That's never happened before. Whatever it was, he had no intention of ever doing that again. It felt like someone had taken sandpaper to his soul, and then some, as if he'd shaven years off his lifespan. I did try to warn you. That odd little voice mocked him. Osmond rose from his desk, eyes wide. Remarkable. You've given me back my youth. Freya was was oblivious to it all, pivoting in place to admire herself. And then some. She ran a hand down on her flank, and Naruto found himself gulping. That robe was way too tight for her decency's sake. I haven't felt this good in... Well, she paused and genuinely seemed to consider the matter for a moment. Forever. And this is amazing. As everyone looked on aghast, she bounced once, twice, thrice, clapped slowly. Hot damn, not bad for an old bra. An icicle shot past his face, tearing a thin slice in his right cheek. Repeat that again and you won't be having children. Freya lowered her arm, eyes narrow. In the same beat, she resumed inspecting herself. Was I always this tall? She wondered aloud. It feels weird when you've spent all those years hunched over. Oh, that's still firm at least. Naruto clapped a hand over Blake's eyes. Emerald did the same to him. Pyrrha averted hers with a squawk, face gone rosy. Without warning, Freya rounded on Naruto, eyes ablaze with blue flame. He froze, a deer in the headlights. Naruto wasn't sure he liked the smile of hers, all bright and high and wild. It was nothing at all like the fading shadow of a woman he'd begun to respect. Here was the young woman in the springtime of her youth, fierce and fearsome as the winter storm. He shrank back half a step. She saw his weakness and pounced. That settles it. Said revitalized woman, cast her staff aside and swept Naruto up into her arms, crushing his face against her bosom. You're adopted. Naruto felt his ears twitched. You and that girlie of yours. She hummed, crushing him tighter. Adopted. Hell, I'll adopt your entire team if you want, or better yet, marry me. Absolutely not, oddly enough. That reactivated Blake. Not you too. Pyrrha stumbled upright. Isn't it a bit sudden for that? Emerald sputtered. Now wait, just a second. Don't run off. Osmond flung his arms up before they could all descend into collective madness. This is unprecedented. We need to run some tests before you do anything else. Fine by me. Freya preened, holding him tight. Let's take this down to the vault. It's nice and quiet down there. No prying eyes to watch us. A sound argument. Naruto coughed, weakly, still tapped in her powerful embrace. Don't suppose I get to say in this? Nope. She grinned at him. If I'm young again, I plan to enjoy it while I can. Freya whirled and dragged him towards the elevator with a mad giggle. Naruto was helpless but to follow. Emerald gave chase. And with that event, the world changed. Previews. Naruto hummed softly. He still held a trump card, one he had kept secret from the world. He had not used it in years for good reason, due to the caveats that came with it. But a thief knew better. It was always best to keep an ace up one's sleeve. A power like that was dangerous in the wrong hands, downright intoxicating in others. He'd seen firsthand what that kind of power did. No, his ironclad rule held. This was something he would only ever use on an enemy, and only when word of it couldn't be traced back to him. He hadn't let Jax's mind control semblance die with him back in the deserts of Vacuo. It was degraded, weaker than before, but still powerful in its own right. Emerald would be furious with him if she knew the truth. Emerald gripped her wrist until she felt the bones creak beneath her grasp. Please, never leave me. Naruto laughed. Nope, never. You're stuck with me till death do us part. Didn't you say you were gonna live forever? Ha! Then that's that what we'll do. Training begins now. Ow! Freya laughed. See, told you. You weren't ready. Blake sighed softly. This was fine. She was not necessarily content, not with Adam's presence in Beacon, but she was happy with her team at least. She would fight to keep them. They needed her help. She couldn't abandon them. It was in that moment that Pyrrha decided to fight for them. End of chapter 10.